Congrats on Greenland to Migration. I really enjoyed the film, and it all starts with that opening segment of Gerard exploring outside and getting caught in the storm. It's a really exciting way to start the film. It even reminded me of a video game I'm a big fan of, Death Stranding, in a fun way. What was your overall philosophy with that segment? Because it's just a strong, impactful start.
Well, I mean, we never thought we were making a second movie. We were so excited when we read Chris Farling's first script, with Greenland and just what it represented, and then to come out in the middle of a disaster, it was pretty crazy times for obviously everybody. And we loved how much the movie was, um, how much it meant to everybody, to the audience around the world. And so when we started thinking about the second movie, it was really staying in the chronology of the timeline of what the pandemic did. So that's why we also set this 5 years later from where the first movie came out. And if the first movie doesn't pull any punches. Most comet movies are thwarting the comet and it never hits. And we want to, no, we told you the Earth was going to go through an extinction event and it did. So this opening is really important. The idea of the rebirth, of a world that is starting over again and trying to get itself above ground and then go and scavenge. And really, what the thematic thread for the whole movie was about is what every species since the beginning of time has had to do to survive, which is migrate. And so it's about going out and foraging, to gain things for your own survival.
Yeah, and this was your first sequel that you've done, and I thought it was interesting because you avoid the common issue of kind of repeating yourself very well. There's similar thematic elements and obviously, returning characters, but this does feel very different and unique. What was the key to making sure this built off the previous film without, just doing the same thing again?
It's a really good question because it was the question that we all asked ourselves. How do we do something different, but how do we also maintain the thread? And it really came down to the family. It's about the Garritys. It's about this love story of a husband and wife that barely are even getting along in the beginning, and they've refined their love and what matters the most, and instill that in a young child who suddenly spends half of his life underground, trying to figure out now as a young adult where his place is in life. So we really carried the common thread about their journey, and how the movies can be back to back. You can watch both movies simultaneously, and it would give you the complete journey of where the Garritys are in this evolution. But they're completely different rides because the first movie is all about getting to safety, and the second movie is a wasteland. It's about how an extinction event looks. We did a lot of research with how fast Mother Nature rebounds. We studied the Chernobyl area because of the radiation that would be polluting the air. We studied the Australian brush fires, about what happened there with all those areas that got scorched, and did a lot of deep dives on the original Yucatan peninsula where the original extinction event occurred, where the comet, that asteroid hit. And also a lot of theories of like that is where Mother Nature rebounded because it basically pounded the sediment so hard that it ended up becoming its own microclimate. And so we use that as creative license to say, okay, this is the journey, and where would Mother Earth start to be reborn, and use that as your journey, right, as your structure, but really having a brand new experience, but reminding the audience that we're not only going to pelt you from the sky, we're also going to deal with underneath your feet now with seismic activity, but we're going back to what we all deal with, which is man versus man. Are you going to be selfish or are you going to be selfless when it's life or death? Are you going to take away from others or are you going to help others? And I always love that basic metaphor for what this franchise stands for.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into spoilers a little bit. Obviously, Gerard's character passes away in the film. People were crying in my theater. People just
Mm.
love Gerard and they love his character in Greenland. Why was it the right time to say goodbye to him here?
It wasn't ever meant to be a gimmick. It was just really an organic way of the first movie of a man atoning from making a horrible mistake, and owning up to his sin, and uh, the movie really representing forgiveness and atonement. And then we always loved how the first movie had a crisis within a crisis. It was always about the family and their own version of crisis, and then they deal with a world crisis, right? We never, that's what our lives are. When the pandemic hit, everybody was dealing with their own, their own things, and then we had to try to balance that. And we wanted that same journey in the second movie, and really about the whole idea of legacy, right? My sons are twins and they're 18, and that's about that rites of passage. What am I leaving them as my legacy to them, and what am I leaving for mankind, especially if you are in a rebuild state? So it was really about putting his character in a ticking clock, knowing that he has a shorter lifespan than we think, and he only has so much time to try to instill what he can in his family and loving them, and the rites of passage of a son, but also getting them somewhere where a lot of us felt the same in the pandemic. We were tired of surviving and we wanted to live again. And so we braved the new world of pandemics and viruses out there and everything else. And, obviously this is on a bigger scale of that same kind of theme.
Yeah, despite that death, the film ends on such a lovely, hopeful note, and I thought it was really impactful. Especially, we're living in such divisive times. What's been the biggest response that you've had talking to fans that saw Greenland 2? Because that ending is just so hopeful and beautiful, and it comes in this, action film with a ton of great set pieces, and it just has like a really heartfelt ending, which I really enjoyed.
What can I tell you, Tyler? I'm a softie. I think that I try not to pull punches with any of my movies. If you look back at like Shot Caller, when violence breeds violence and you become violent, you're not going to get out of prison in that kind of space. But you hopefully pass on a message to your son, and you get that kind of smile on your face of, that the rites of passage has happened, and a sense of forgiveness. And in this one, it was really about, in a world today of where hope is so important, right? We're all dealing with a lot of stuff in our own world today. And so it was really about that. It was also the fact that if John Garrity's whole MO was to get his family to safety, to allow them to start to live, not just survive, but also understanding, getting his son to understand who he was and what he represented. And I love that. I love that whole metaphor of, that we all want to learn from our fathers and our forefathers before them. And seeing it in Nathan of becoming a man, and and the future of where we go next, as mankind.
And my last question for you, it was surreal. The week of release for this film, the Greenland U.S. controversy was going on. How surreal was that, seeing that? Because like Greenland was all over the headlines, but the film wasn't the first thing people were seeing. That had to be very strange to experience.
It was funny. I was a little bit day late and a dollar short of even understanding what people were talking about, because I don't follow the news religiously. I just try to get the information they need, and move on from it. And people started talking about it, but I knew that was always in the zeitgeist. Like that had been going on for quite a while, the talk about Greenland, and then didn't realize it was becoming so much more real. To be honest with you, Tyler, any of my films, and especially this one, I just try to keep my head out of all that, and stick to our game plan, which is to make a love story to not only this family and complete their journey, but also to us as people and humans, and it was my favorite thing about this franchise is it's ordinary people under extraordinary circumstances, and more so than most of my movies where it's just normal people. They're us. They're flawed. They're vulnerable. They're dealing with their own issues, and then they're just trying to do it right. They're just trying to live their life right. And I love the story of this, and love Allison's journey on this as well, of a woman that is not just going to sit. She's going to be a part of the rebuild and goes into government, and what the complications of that and so forth. It's just everything about that. That's what I love about this movie, and love the ending of it of what it has to say.
Yeah, there's some real beauty in this film. Rick, congrats on this film and congrats on Shelter. It's wild you had two films out in the same month. So
Yeah, it is a
congrats to
bit
you.
surreal.